What's the password? Welcome to the Game Master Speakeasy. Brought to you by the record button.
Hello and welcome to the Game Master Speakeasy. My name is Cody.
And I'm Lance.
And we want you to come in off the street, grab a seat, and get a drink. If you are of legal drinking age of a resident in whatever country you hail from, you may also have an alcoholic beverage. And today, we are going to drink a nice, crisp, and refreshing not stout.
Not stout. That's true. We're not doing a stout today.
Anyway, we're smack dab in the middle of summer, so I have decided that we're going to have something a little more fruity, a little bit more crisp and refreshing. Before we get to that, let's talk about some tabletop news.
All right.
Yeah, because if you haven't figured it out by now here on episode 19, Lance and I like to talk about tabletop stuff, mostly RPGs, but I also dabble a little bit in skirmish war games, and we have an interest in the lore of certain things that are tabletop related, like 40K. I don't watch Critical Role, but a lot of my friends do. Well, I watch like an episode here and there. I don't watch it.
Yeah, so I don't watch it religiously, but
speaking of 40K, are you familiar with the word squats? Does that ring a bell to you?
40K dwarves.
Yeah, the 40K dwarves that basically haven't existed in the tabletop for almost, 2 decades?
It's been a really long time since I've heard anything about them. They were from high-gravity planets, which is why they're short.
Yes, well, this is news to you, then. Squats are back, baby. And
great.
I am so excited. They're not called squats anymore. They're called the Leagues of Votann.
Okay.
And they are super cool. The models, they just look like dwarves in more advanced power armor.
Okay.
Because their whole lore, because they were announced back in, I want to say February or something like that. But they've been teasing more about the lore and letting out new models. And just this last week or so, they actually put out like a stat block for their basic trooper.
So they're gonna be their own army, or
they're their own faction. They are their own faction, tried and true. I suspect in the lore that the Imperium will not actually take too kindly to them, based on the certain parts of the Imperium's rules, especially the AdMech.
Because they're mutants.
Well, they are just short dudes, but you are correct actually. In the lore, they are. A lot of them, I don't know if it's all of them or a lot of them, but they are clones.
Okay.
And it's not like Star Wars where they are all one clone. It's that they have many, many templates, and a lot of their population are drawn from those DNA templates.
Okay.
And they are bred to be faster, stronger, not taller, but...
yeah, of all the things. Well, I mean, we've got to keep them dwarves, so we'll make them faster and stronger, but we're not going to genetically engineer them to be taller. Why would we do that?
But they are called the Leagues of Votann, which are basically like dwarf clans, essentially. Okay. But the cool thing is, we as players know what a Votann is, because GW has already spilled those beans. Mm-hmm. But in lore, what a Votann is a super big secret, because it's what are the names of those like supercomputers that the Imperium used to make?
Oh God!
That if finding one is a huge deal.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's you know what I'm talking about though. A Votann is kind of like that, but kind of not. It's a Votann is a super cogitator that houses basically a semi-thinking intelligence.
Yeah, they banned those. That's the reason they have servitors, because the human brain is apparently less likely to go crazy than say an actual bona fide AI. So they banned that technology.
But the Votanns were not designed to be in existence for thousands of years, so now they're starting to develop quirks and personalities. And it's very important. Each clan has their own Votann, but it's. I like the lore. They are supposed to be more advanced, because whereas the Imperium is just like, hey, let's go look up old stuff that we used to have. The Leagues are actually, innovative.
Trying to develop new technology.
Trying to develop new technologies. I think that they might even have kind of like semi-sentient robots that they consider just as not human but important as the next person.
And that is justification alone for the Imperium to wipe them off the map.
Yeah, they can try, but I have always been a big fan of dwarves, rock and stone. If you are familiar with Deep Rock Galactic,
yeah.
This is that's kind of your gateway drug into space dwarves, and now there's more official space dwarves. So I'm stoked. I want to paint these dudes. I want them to have kill team rules. I want to run dwarves and Traveler or something. I don't know. Whatever. I want to put more space dwarves and stuff.
There are settings for space and fantasy stuff. I mean,
Starfinder's a great one for that, which we'll also talk about here in the news.
Neat.
Second, Critical Role is back after some hiatus. Are you watching season 3?
No, I think the only season that I really followed like fully was maybe the first one.
Okay.
The second one, I dabbled a few episodes into it, and I haven't even touched the third season.
I watched the first, I want to say 4 or 5 episodes of season 3 with my significant other, but then I kind of petered off because I just don't ever find myself. It's part of being a single monitor plebeian. Is that I don't put video media on in the background because I don't have a second monitor. And you might be wondering, what year is it, and do you actually use computers, Cody? But I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have not had a single monitor.
It really just comes down to laziness. I just don't have the desk space for it.
Yeah, it's understandable.
But they are back, and they have a new intro, which is pretty cool. It looks a lot to me. Excuse me. Pardon the right into the producer's ears. But what are we, 5 minutes in?
Yeah, well, probably won't be the last one today.
We've already cracked open our beers for the episode. Crit Roll is back. The intro is I don't know if it's like rotoscoped or animated, or you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Rotoscope is animation, but yeah. I couldn't tell just by looking at it, but it kind of looked like the Take On Me kind of thing, except with color.
I'm a little surprised they didn't get the animators that did the Amazon show to do their intro.
To do the intro for them.
That was it was a really good show, and the animation was really good, and all the characters looked cool.
I can't wait for more of that show.
That is.
If you haven't watched the Critical Role show on Amazon Prime, go do yourself a treat.
I like Critical Role, but I just don't have the time to sit for like 3 or 4 hours and actually watch them full on play D&D.
Yeah, especially when Monster Hunter's out, right? So.
Yeah, that too. But I do have the time to sit and binge watch an entire like 6-hour season of a summary, essentially, of their tabletop gaming.
Admittedly, it's a lot less content,
and it was really good.
Yeah,
really good.
It was so good.
Well, if you think about our gaming sessions too. If you were to try to take and record them and play them back, they would be a lot longer than if you were to condense the story to the important stuff.
Oh, yeah, trim the fat, so to speak.
A lot of the table talk, a lot of the kind of planning that goes on, a lot of the other little stuff.
There are actual live plays of Pathfinder and D&D where people will actually trim the fat like that, and it makes for usually better content.
Better experience.
Especially they'll trim the fat and add sound effects and stuff, too, and it makes it more dramatic, almost like a radio show, kind of. But anyway, Critical Role is back on, and they have started their own in-house music studio, I guess. A label I think that's the word, the nomenclature to use here.
Just making like fantasy jams for their stuff? Okay, no, I mean, that's not bad.
Their first album, because I think it's called like Scanlan Shorthalt's music, something or other. It's under his name.
That's awesome.
And the first album is called Welcome to Tal'Dorei, and then in parentheses, Crit Roll soundtrack.
Okay.
And I listened to like the first 3/4 of it earlier today. It's like it's 56 minutes long, and when I say that it is part background music and part soundtrack, do you know what I'm intending there? What I'm implying?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, so like some of the songs do sound great for if you want them to be not distracting. Mm-hmm. And then some of the songs sound like movie soundtracks where at this point in the song you can tell that he's coming up over a ridge. Okay. You know, there's something going on in the song.
So there's at least something in there that you could like say copy and paste into your playlist for tabletop game night.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think it was about 2 minutes into the song entering Zephyra, where one of the parts of the song kind of sounded like it was going to go into the Jurassic Park theme song a little bit. It was something about the way the note progression reminded me of that, but it's good. I recommend checking it out and using it for background noise in your fantasy game if you haven't already. Background noise, background music is a good way, as long as it's not too distracting and intrusive, is a good way to up the tone of what's going on.
My kid has been like casually listening to like the Northman soundtrack,
which is funny,
which is great because I'm listening to it as he's doing that, and I'm like, I'm gonna put this on the playlist for our Norse game.
Oh yeah, it's highly appropriate.
Just highly appropriate and just really good. So
the last bit of news I have is related to Starfinder, actually.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah,
Full circle.
So there are multiple settings that have done things where they have like a big world-spanning event that's to shake the lore up. Mm-hmm. I know that I was talking to you about it before we started recording. One example is system failure for Shadowrun. The spell plague for Forgotten Realms.
Shadowrun's done it a couple of times. They had
Have
the
they?
year of the Comet. They had
Okay.
yeah, the Renraku Arcology shut down, which the fallout from that was like advanced nanotechnology. Pushed the tech forward. The collapse of the Matrix was the birth of Matrix 2.0, which took everything wireless.
So they just do. They have a big event every time they need to change something.
Well, Shadowrun though has always been a time progression. I think Shadowrun first edition starts in 2050. And then each edition after that has accelerated the timeline 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, when I was looking up details of system failure, it took place in 2064.
Mm-hmm.
The spell plague of Forgotten Realms caused entire nations to move around, and then there was the because it was Abir or the two planets that became suffused in 4th edition, and then they separated. Again for 5th, basically. And then the fall of Cadia. In 40K, which is the first major plot movement in 20 years.
Yeah, I was going to say that split the Imperium in two, didn't it?
Yeah, split the Imperium in two. It's kind of a huge time jump. I think it's a century is essentially what they said has gone by, which is why Castellan Creed's daughter is going to replace him as a model on the tabletop, things like that. But my question to you is, how do you feel about big lore-spanning events in general, and then also, how do you feel about it for a setting that's only been out 4 or 5 years? Because that's what the Drift Crisis is for Starfinder. They are basically having a galaxy-spanning event where the drift is going haywire, which, if you'll remember, is the way you do space travel.
Yeah. I think for me, the validity of it, I guess, depends on whether or not, because some companies, I'm not making any accusation against anyone in particular, will do these changes specifically just to sell books.
Right.
Some of them will do it because they want to push the story, and selling books is just a positive side effect of that. Mm-hmm. And I think usually when you read the material, you can tell which of the two that is.
Whether someone wrote that material passionately, or whether it was they were forced to in order
as
to
a cash grab. So I think that
sell
depends.
A hardcover.
And I also think that, and it really depends on what the drift thing is going to change as far as content. But to go back to Shadowrun, because 4th edition takes place in Matrix 2.0, they actually wrote a splat book that does a rules conversion, so you can use the 4th edition rules, but play back in 2050 before that happened.
Oh, okay.
So I like it. Like, that was one of the better things that I think it was Catalyst at the time is in charge of 4th edition that they did, because I always liked the kind of 80s sci-fi feel of the older Shadowrun when Deckers had to use a data cable to plug into computers to hack everything, even though technologically
the ghost in the shell kind of thing.
Even though technologically that's an absurdity looking at the tech that we have today, and then assuming in 2050 that we wouldn't have wireless.
Like when you watch the original Alien movie and their monitors are about 4 or 5 inches
they
by
look
6.
Look like my old TV from the 80s. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that they still supported it, at least in part, with that splat book made me happy, because that was, golden era for Shadowrun for me was when I was a teenager, and that was in the 90s. So that was before cell phone. Your cell phone that you had back then was a brick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was before we had this massive wireless infrastructure that we have. So I liked it when they did it that way, but I think it really depends. If it's 40K, for example, the Cadia thing. Obviously, that was necessary. They haven't done a setting change in 20 years. I don't think they did that as a mindless cash grab. I think they did it because somebody somewhere at GW was like, hey, we haven't advanced the plot line of this game in
quite a while.
Literally decades. So maybe we pick some big event and do it. I don't know what the Drift Crisis is going to end up being, so I don't know if that's a thing. But, Paizo's got a pretty good reputation, so I assume if they're doing it, it was
because... They generally do, and we like their products.
Yeah, so, my assumption here is that if they did it because somebody came up with the idea, and everybody was like, wow, that is a really good idea.
From memory from the blurb, there's over 100 player options in terms of gear, class stuff, themes, things to customize your character, and there's supposed to be 20 plot hooks to set your characters up, no matter how you want to get your group involved into this galaxy-spanning crisis. So I imagine that there's all sorts of things, like whether you want to be part of the Starfinder Society or maybe you're mercenaries, but there's all sorts of stuff. I'm hoping, and I know this is not likely, but I'm looking about how, Fall of Cadia is the herald of Warhammer 40k 9th edition. I think System Failure was a setup for probably the next edition of Shadowrun. The Spell Plague had to do with an edition change. The theme I've always gotten is that big world-spanning events like these always are ahead of an edition change.
So what, you're hoping they apply Pathfinder 2 rules to Starfinder?
Kinda. The 3-action economy. And slap that on Starfinder and we'll start a game next week.
I was about to say that before you started talking about the next edition is, you know what I want more than a Drift Crisis? A conversion to Pathfinder 2 system for Starfinder.
The stamina rules are already, because they tested the stamina rules in Starfinder.
I like the idea of the setting for Starfinder really appeals to me. We didn't play it much, but then after Pathfinder 2 came out, my desire to play Starfinder just disappeared. Not because of the content of the system, but because of the actual mechanics.
Yeah.
Because I now know that Pathfinder 2's mechanics are so much better than Starfinder's are.
Yeah.
I want that for that game. Like, if you give me Starfinder 2.0 with, the Pathfinder 2nd edition, action economy rules and stuff like that.
Maybe don't gimp sorcerers so hard.
Yeah.
Or the magic users, because in Starfinder they only have 6th level spells, which kind of seems a little whack to me.
Basically just take the
skeleton of Pathfinder 2.
Yeah, take Pathfinder 2 and just paint Starfinder over the top of it.
Yeah,
like the magic system, all that stuff. I'm fine with elves and dwarves and stuff in space. I'm okay with that. Space dragons, cool, great idea. I just mechanically I can't go back. I can't bring myself to do it.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because Pathfinder 2 is such a well-constructed system.
It really is. I'm a big fan of it mechanically for balance mechanics and for flavor purposes.
Yeah, it does a very good job of what it's supposed to do, and I think Starfinder needs that overhaul. I think it would help Starfinder a lot.
Oh yes, I am in total agreement. So, like you said, I'm interested in maybe getting a copy of it and reading it. Now that you've said, when you read through things, you can usually tell, because that'd be the real way to kind of give it a judgment call.
Yeah.
Put it under a microscope and see. Maybe I'll do that.
Well, and maybe part of the reason they're doing it is, like you said, they're planning a new edition.
Fingers crossed.
And maybe they're planning a new edition because people like us have been constantly bitching about how we'd like to see the system for Pathfinder 2 applied to Starfinder.
We can't be the only ones.
No, there's no way in hell we're the only ones. It's not possible.
Yeah. All right, so that's enough of that. What'd you do this week? Or at least, talk to me about your experience as a player in the Call of Cthulhu session.
All right, Call of Cthulhu. Let's see. What did we do last week?
You got yourselves into some sewer trouble.
That's true. We did start the exploration of the sewer system
After splitting the party.
We always do that. We do it. Well, the thing is, I think we do it more in Call of Cthulhu because the game is not as combat heavy. Like in a game that's combat heavy, splitting the party sucks because that means if half the party gets in combat, the other half's just standing around doing nothing.
Whereas in Call of Cthulhu, combat's not going to last that long.
If it's mostly narrative, the splitting the party is almost more fun.
A PC can take 1 or 2 hits from a monster and then they're dead.
Yeah, it's combat. You don't want to be in. Being in combat is just generally not where you want to be in life. So let's see where we went down. How did we even get in the sewers?
Well, you
have to refresh my memory. It's been a
okay. So you had the whole thing where you had investigated what's her name's apartment and got all those keys.
No, I remember that.
And then
because the
priest went and got a map of the sewer system.
Yeah, that's right, because they investigated her apartment without bringing me. I am the burglar.
You're the burglar.
I am the burgle man, as our scientist refers to.
He refers to you as the burgle man.
And they decided to go burgle an apartment
without the burgle man.
Without the burgle man, and they made kind of a mess of the entire thing, to be honest.
It was funny. It was hilarious.
And then he got the map of the sewers.
Yeah, Father Podrick got the map of the sewers and discovered there was an older under sewer, essentially.
That's right, the sewer under the sewer.
And so 2 of the party members, the best shots of the party, are going to Salem to go investigate something else.
Shoot.
You can shoot, but I think they have more points in it.
They might. I don't know.
And so you have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have pistols.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I do have
Whereas
pistols.
they actually have like shotguns and rifles and are really good at them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I have the pistol.
Yeah. Which is funny to me. So the the crazy scientist and the
preacher man.
preacher, both of which are not great fighters.
Nope.
You've got the Burgle man, who is an ex-criminal, and he's pretty good, handy with a knife and a gun.
He's still a criminal.
Yeah, he's still he's a criminal. And then you've got the NPC that's with them. And that's it. The NPC, who's for him is a key connection, so he's kind of got limited plot armor without the other PC who's currently split. So he can't die. He has to get away just because that's how key connections work.
The debutante's boyfriend. And
the debutante's boyfriend. Yeah, he would have to escape somehow or be captured alive.
We became friends because he distracted the police so that I could get that file out of the detective's
right.
car. That's okay. Now it's coming back to me.
Yeah.
He's down there with us. Well, the ladies in the group have all ventured to Salem. They were visiting an asylum, if memory serves.
Yep. Well, they were visiting the plan was to hit up someone who could figure out the code book for you. And then hit up an asylum, the Danvers State Hospital, which is just north of Salem.
Yeah, because that's where Helen French is supposed to be.
That's where she's supposed to be, and that's where a woman named Helen French is. And there's also a woman named Helen French in Arkham.
We have 2 Helen Frenches, and we don't think one of them is the real Helen French, and it's probably the one that's in Arkham.
So now that we are, because obviously you can kind of tell from a player's perspective that this first investigation is reaching a climax.
We're getting to the point where we're starting to kind of figure out what's going on, or at least.
How has Call of Cthulhu 7th edition stacked up to every other tabletop game you've played?
I like it. It's different. Yeah. I like it. It's different in a lot of good ways because combat is not the focus of this game. In almost I don't want to say almost every other. In the vast majority of tabletop games, I think combat is a heavy focus. And that's not a bad thing, depending on the setting that you're playing. But this game is almost entirely narrative. I mean, the roles are there to help push the narrative. Well, I guess the roles in all these games are help push the narrative forward. But, the combat mechanics are very simple because the expectation is you're not going to be spending a lot of time in combat.
No,
because combat will kill you.
Yes, with your 9 HP that you might have.
It's not a great place to be, especially against the kind of things you're bumping into in a Call of Cthulhu game.
Yeah, and then when you get a critical success and things start doing maximum damage on top of die rolls,
you get wrecked.
You can get wrecked pretty, because if you take a single instance of damage that I want to say is greater than your HP pool, you're just dead immediately. You're just dead immediately. So if you have 11 HP and you take 12 damage, you're dead. Dead on the spot.
I mean, these things have claws and knives and tentacles.
From a keeper of the lore's perspective, the only reason a couple of the characters haven't died is because on chase rolls, the monster has truly fumbled.
Yeah, no, I know. I remember Dan struggled with that a little bit.
Dr. Spencer Spengler...
He almost got pretty early.
Survived by the whims of fate and dice alone. Do anything else tabletop-related work on YE at all?
No, actually, I haven't suspended working on that project, but I took a little bit of a break because I've been working on that conversion for Savage Worlds.
Sci-fi Savage Worlds thing.
Yeah, it seems like an easy thing to kind of get done. So, and it kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
You strike while the iron is hot.
That's kind of where it's at. When the inspiration hits you, if you don't run with it, then it makes it hard to do anything else, at least for me. So I've been working on that quite a bit. As a matter of fact, when we were driving back and forth to the little family thing we did this afternoon, Sarah was driving. I had the Savage Worlds book in my lap, and I was going through my files on my phone and making changes to stuff. So it's kind of been my bigger project as of late.
What you're working on should either be important that it needs to be done soon, or because you're enjoying it. Same as tabletop prep. So
exactly.
So while reminiscing about what we've been doing this week, what are we drinking, Lance?
We are drinking, and you brought this probably to stop me from
Today's bartender's name is Summer, and Summer served us a very appropriately fruity beverage.
Yeah, this is the Lake Time Brewery's High Watermark Watermelon Wheat.
And it's a watermelon treat.
Oh, Jesus.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I like it because the fruit is not like front and center. You know me and fruit beers, I'm kind of always hit or miss on them. But you can definitely taste it, and it's kind of neat because it's an ale, but it does have a little bit of that hoppiness on the tail end. When you get to the end of the drink, there's just that little bite of hops that's kind of hits you. It's almost IPA adjacent, actually.
When you're drinking kind of like I want to say sours and things like that, it can kind of taste like you're drinking a alcoholic fruit juice. Yeah, sometimes. Whereas this tastes like a beer.
Yeah, it tastes like a beer.
This is beer.
This is a beer with a hint.
Beer with watermelon.
It's a beer with a hint of watermelon.
Yeah,
not watermelon juice with a hint of beer.
Right. Whereas the one brewing has like a watermelon wizard, and it's a sour gose. So that's going to be.
I think it's Confluence, isn't it?
It
I'm
is
pretty sure I
Confluence.
saw those when I was at the.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different flavored wizards of various fruits.
I thought about buying a bunch of them and bringing them to game night.
Oh, yeah, that would be appropriate.
Would have been really appropriate for the last one. But we'll talk about that next episode.
Yeah. So that is what we are drinking today, and I honestly like it. I'd give this. I guess we don't really have a rating system. I'd say it's pretty good. I would buy this again.
Yes.
Yeah. I would buy this again. I wouldn't buy this in the winter. It is very much a summer beverage. It's watermelon for Pete's sake.
I would rate this repeat offender, as in I would drink more than one of them.
Yeah, you would have more than one. And this is it's not too heavy, so you can sit around the campfire and drink it with a hot dog in your other hand and beer in this one, big sunglasses on as the sprinkler's going and your friends are playing bags in the corner of the lawn.
I could crush a sixer of this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right. So as we continue to enjoy our beverage, let's get on to the main juice.
All right, what are we talking about today?
So last episode, we talked about interesting combat, right?
Yeah.
And you reminisced about certain events that were memorable in your brain, like Dan feeling like a badass as Scorpion. We had my initial lackluster experience of is something that we've talked about. We talked about describing combat with flavor. But what about role-playing? We have talked before about engaging your players. We have talked before about creating NPCs. All of these things have to do with role-playing. But I want to get into a little bit finer grains, examine the smaller carrots of it, so to speak. What are some of your most favorite and memorable role-playing moments, and why? What do you think made them a memorable role-playing moment? Obviously, we can say the blanket statement, high drama situations are memorable.
Yeah,
but some of them are more memorable than others. And I'm curious as to, what is the main ingredient of that secret sauce?
I mean, at least as far as our group goes, I think one of the bigger ingredients is Moose and Bee.
Yeah.
Like, I think they do the big dramatic moments really
catering
well.
to our primary audience, right?
Yeah, well, I know they listen to the podcast, but I mean, seriously, like when the first incarnation of Bog died and they had a just hugely heartfelt funeral for him.
Yeah.
Like, this nasty little problem goblin that had been following the party for all of a couple of days, and they still, like...
I'm gonna put my foot down and remind you that was a lot on my shoulders, too.
Yeah, you were playing at the time, weren't you?
I made a big deal about overcoming my character's speciesism against goblins in that moment.
I sometimes forget that you play games too, because you
I was in that game.
You do the majority of the game mastering, so
I think the Stone Cairn was my idea.
Yeah, no, actually it was. Now I feel bad.
Yeah, so now that you've attributed something that was my fault to them, what's a different thing that you can think of that they helped with?
I mean, there was always been good just drama in, like, the specific group that we're playing with now has always done a really good job of the drama.
Because there's enough character argument that no one gets truly butthurt outside of the game, really.
Not only that, but
maybe a little.
The Brotherhood has always been kind of the world's most dysfunctional family.
Yeah,
like it's like the Umbrella Academy. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, that's a really good comparison.
It really is, because
they're helping each other and solving problems, but boy, do they argue.
And they're all different in all kinds of different ways. But like the grand rescue of Aram, when we finally got him back, that was a really huge deal to the party.
Why? So that was a really huge deal just because of the emotion attached to it and the buildup of it. But what can you remember about that specific scene?
I really liked the everybody gets to go into Aram's head adventure part of that. Like because I mean that was a complete. I don't think there was any combat involved in that at all. It was all narrative.
It was mostly narrative. Yeah, it was a narrative flashback. There might have been one brief combat with a shade of the memories past, but I don't think nothing super. It wasn't a boss fight.
No, they got to live through Aram's abusive childhood, his induction into a cult, his binding to a star god. And then eventually watching him put his fragmented personality back together and become whole again. That was a big moment. I mean, it's kind of thing that's hard to describe adequately on a podcast.
The first two things that you've described are things that were pertinent to characters you played.
That's true.
Which I think is part of the secret sauce. Of course, it makes sense. You're playing a character from the first person or third person perspective. The moments that your character is a part of are going to be more memorable.
And I mean,
right?
I was going to say, obviously, at least for me, those are the ones that are going to have the most impact.
So what are some memorable moments for you where your character was not in the spotlight? Whether it be from Pathfinder, the Brotherhood, or Deadlands, or maybe an old Shadowrun game, anything like that.
I think I have a couple.
Okay.
One of the most dramatic moments, I think, and this was kind of combat adjacent, because it erupted into combat, and there was role-playing being yelled back and forth during the actual combat, but it was the Hans and his undead wife incident.
Oh yeah, that was before my time.
Pretty high drama. So I think we talked about it in one of the other episodes. But I had a mad scientist in Deadlands that Dan was playing, and from the beginning of the character, he had planned to do something that would be considered bad by Deadlands standards.
yeah.
And I told him, I said, okay, this means that your character is eventually going to become an NPC.
And he was cool with that.
And he was fine with it. He wanted to play it. So his character was an elderly mad scientist who kept the preserved brain of his late wife in his... he had a wagon, and that's where his laboratory was in the wagon. He was very protective about not letting anyone in the wagon. And eventually in the plot, he decided that he was going to make a Frankenwife. So he started...
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, no, so we were in a particular city, and some of the local ladies of the night started disappearing. The rest of the group, of course, thought that this was some new big bad that they were going to have to fight, or some small bad that they were going to have to fight.
Didn't the blame eventually fall on, the suspicion fell on the reporter?
Yeah,
they thought the reporter was creating their own story.
There was a reporter there that had a mutual interest. Well, hers and Dan's characters had a mutual. Well, the reporter was an NPC, but the Dan's character and this NPC had kind of a mutual interest. And unbeknownst to the rest of the party, the reason was because she actually resembled his late wife. So the party eventually came to believe that she was the one doing all the killing, and that when Hans disappeared, that she was responsible for it, as opposed to the other way around.
Which is pretty funny.
Yeah, and eventually when they tracked, the perpetrator down, it turns out that Hans had set up a little laboratory in this old barn a ways out from town, and they arrived basically just in time to see him resurrect this new Frankenwife of his. Well, being, at this point in the campaign, essentially professional abomination hunters, they did what professional abomination hunters do. They decided
hunted abomination.
They wanted to kill the abomination, which, of course, did not make Hans happy, and he was very dramatically screaming at them as this gunfight ensued because he was trying to protect his zombie wife, which was not, his wife was not there. If you know anything about Deadlands and the creation of undead, there was no wife. There was no wife left in that brain. That brain had become basically a vessel for the kind of demons that animate undead in the Deadlands universe. But Hans didn't know or care about that.
He's the one that thought horses could talk.
Yeah, well, he a mad scientist. The mad being an imperative.
Oh yeah. It's right in the name of the arcane background.
Yeah,
right?
You go a little nuts over time. That's just how it happens.
So we've got the first piece of juice is dramatic situations in which your character is in the spotlight. Mm-hmm. Number two is, I guess, is it because it was a really well planned, thought out betrayal among the party? Because those are usually, you hear favorable stories about those.
I think it was the emotions you could feel at the table when the rest of the party realized Dan's character had did this.
Yeah, so there was
you could feel the tension around the table, like it was in the air.
Oh man, that would have
as
been
the rest
awesome
of the party
to be
realized
fly on the wall in that session.
Because they had gone through a whole bunch of stuff with this character. I mean, this had been, they'd gotten lost up in the Rocky Mountains and got snowed in and damn near starved to death before being attacked by a Wendigo.
So it's not just that they were playing their characters and because you talk about role playing as making a decision that your character would make, but not necessarily the person. That's when you're role playing, right? But you were saying that they were feeling emotions that their characters were feeling that they weren't necessarily feeling, right?
I think the best moments of role playing are when the character emotions spill into the players.
Okay.
When that conflict there is so big that not only are the characters themselves feeling it, but the players then through osmosis are sucking up some of that.
And we've had some of those moments.
We have had some of those moments.
You kind of sit there and look around the table like, is this person angry or is their character angry?
Exactly.
And it might just be that the character is angry and it's seeping into the player. Like a method actor.
Yeah, exactly.
To be really precocious. We're all method actors and we all deserve Tony Awards.
Well, I can do without the awards, but...
So we've got a good dramatic situation in which your primary player character is involved. You've got emotions running high.
Yeah.
So what are some smaller memorable role-playing moments? The ones that aren't dramatic, that are just those fleeting passing moments that are kind of like nice,
We had a lot of those in Shadowrun.
Okay.
It was almost universally this like ever-growing conflict between the type of characters that Dan made and the type of characters my friend Paul made. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was because those two get along just fine.
Yeah,
they're really good friends. We've been friends. Like, the collective of us have been friends for literally decades since we were little kids. But like, I remember the time that Paul's character like shot Dan's character right outright, like
straight up real PvP at the table.
We had they were, I don't remember what their characters were arguing about. It's something to do with the job that they were doing, and then of course the healer scraped Dan up off the ground. But I mean, there's been a lot of little ones. How many do you have that we remember? I'm sure you've got a few. I mean,
so I think of the things that you mention, like there's that scene that's pretty typical, I think, in many D&D groups when the adventuring party, the mostly good guy adventuring party, is in the campfire scene with a bunch of nearby NPCs. That's usually when anyone that's feeling pretty froggy will take the initiative to go and approach an NPC and ask questions about them, learn their history, get involved. When the players start asking questions of imaginary people, I think that's what creates a really nice little moment. Some of the memorable ones are where you go and gamble at the Darkhold for multiple, not necessarily the deck of many things situation.
Hated that,
but I think of that. I think of certain feast scenes with important characters. You talked about Bog's funeral. That is a scene where Bog was in the limelight, and the rest of us were not. That had all the spice. That had a dramatic moment. That had people feeling their characters' emotions, and then we were just saying nice things to each other. I think that's part of it. Is when people say nice things and have wholesome, fuzzy moments, where you brought up Moose and Bee earlier. If there was a plaque award for most likely to try and feed the animal, it's going to them. Well, no matter what the animal is, whether it be a hydra or if there's any chance at all that the animal could possibly just be misunderstood, they're going to try and be warm and fuzzy towards a creature, no matter its origin.
Yep.
I think about the moments where people have had to say sorry to one another after certain events. Like a big change recently was Daraj turning over a new leaf when he apologized to some royalty in the underwater city. Character growth, I think, is memorable for me, and I think the true answer to my question is that it's made up of a bunch of parts that equal more than their sum.
No, I can agree with that.
The secret sauce to interesting role-playing is multifaceted, to throw around a buzzword.
Yeah.
And as many ingredients. If one ingredient is too heavy or too lacking, you're not going to have these memorable moments. But they are memorable, and I like that how our brains work, because these memories sit in our long-term memory, but what I was wearing that day to that session, or what was going on in my life that day, is I have no memory. Couldn't tell you what time of the year that session was. I'd have no idea when James showed up with a voodoo bag to clear away a wave of zombies.
That was another really good one, yeah.
That was, for me, that was a personal character in the limelight moment, coming to save the party.
But I mean, it's role-playing and it's drama, and it's good.
You've
or like when Dan Colcock the vampire hunter for killing the little kid vampire.
Oh, yeah, that was a pretty good one, too.
Lawful good paladin, we were...
The mutual misunderstanding of, do you know how to cure vampirism? And the vampire hunter says, yes, I do, and kills the little kid.
Yep.
Because the little, that's a cure for vampirism. Vampirism is death.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
I think...
the paladin did not take well to the killing of the vampire child.
But if I had to boil away the extra components and leave only the meat behind, I would say the main ingredients to what makes an interesting roleplay are probably, number one, the game master who is paying attention to what their players actually want and setting up a possible scenario for them to engage in. If you have a bad GM, it's going to be a bad gaming experience. Full stop.
That's combat. That's drama. That's the role playing. I mean, if you have
someone who runs a great combat but is very bad at telling meaningful role playing stories, right? That's something that I consider as a possibility. They might not be bad all around.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said bad GM, so my assumption was immediately, oh, you mean the kind that just suck at everything.
Good point. I did say that, but I kind of meant about setting up character development and things like that. So, situations where your game master is setting the players up for success, whether that means, and by success I mean they're going to have interesting role-playing. We can talk about Aram getting betrayed by Zachariah and Ulfgar, and that's not necessarily a success, but it was a successful, memorable role-playing moment.
It was Ulfgar that hurt the most. And when I catch him, I'm going to hurt him.
And I like to, see, that's what I like to think, is that Aram doesn't just feel anger, but betrayal. And it's a deep sting, because this is someone that he had opened up to.
Well, and we had, as a party, we've been together for years.
Yeah.
Like, we'd been adventuring for years. We'd seen tragedy. We both escaped death narrowly on how many different occasions.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes because of him.
Yeah, mostly because of him.
You as characters helped put his father's rear end on the throne, quite literally.
And then he puts a blade between my shoulder blades.
Yeah.
Not literally, but...
Some drugs in your wine.
Yeah, well. He sold me off to the big bad evil guy. That's kind of screwed up.
Let's say that there are three parts of the tripod. What would you say those three parts are? I would say the number one being the GM setup.
Yeah.
Whether that includes engaging with your characters' backstories or working with players to set up a betrayal, or just, you're actively working with them in favor of a good storytelling moment.
Yep. Character buy-in is
character buy-in.
Yeah, you need to be able to get inside your character's skin.
So that character buy-in is the second tripod?
I would say, yeah.
So being able to connect emotionally is what you're saying. Is you want to not only think about what your character's doing, but you want to feel what your character's doing. That's the second part of the tripod. So the third bit is what? I would say that it has to do with not just the GM and the player, but I think it has to have at least one other player. I think that's the tripod, actually. Now that I'm saying it aloud, I'm having the epiphany.
Yeah, no, you're right, because emotional role-playing interactions with an NPC are good. Like those can be good.
I would describe them as really neat.
Yeah, they're never as good as the interaction between two player characters.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. Is you've got, no matter what you do, the most beloved NPC is never going to feel as human as one of the other players, because the NPC is sitting from the other side of the screen.
Well,
which always kind of comes with a little bit of animosity somehow.
Not only that, but when you're doing like a player character and a player character in a dramatic moment, or like especially in a betrayal moment, like Moose got to stare me in the eye as his character betrayed mine.
Yeah, just looking across the
table, right in my face,
trying to hold a poker face.
Yeah, as he just, because my character ended up in captivity and tortured for a couple of years.
The three of you, if I remember correctly, there was a bit of it was actually over an apology, and it was a toast to working together.
Yeah,
you guys were toasting to working together and overcoming the bad guy, and in your beverage was a magical roofie.
The toast was all crap. It was a lie.
Yeah, you were stolen away by an alchemical poison that knocked you out.
This is true.
And it was put in there by none other than a dwarf.
It was the big sad.
And what's funny about that situation is you make it a point that wine is part of Aram's personality.
Yeah,
like
no,
he's
like where everybody else is
like
guzzling.
how Lance is a craft beer drinker, and it's part of your personality. He was a wine drinker.
Aram's a little fancy. He's a little extra.
Yeah, and they took that and plunged. That's like that's good writing, actually. You know, when you set up in chapter 1 that a character really likes wine, and then later when that's how they end up being betrayed. That's that's a callback. That's Chekhov's crystal glass.
Yep, and it worked.
Yep. So that's the tripod then.
Yep.
Is you've got to have GM set up, player buy-in, and then other player engagement. I think is going to be the most significant and impactful, memorable role-playing moments. But as a game master, what can a game master do to help facilitate that? When you're getting down to this, assume that I am a brand new GM and I'm just kind of getting into this. What parts of my PC's backstories do I look at? How do I predict what they're going to like or don't like? Do you have any advice for a new GM in this regard who wants to set up memorable moments?
Don't be afraid to keep secrets.
Okay. Yeah.
What I mean by that is, if a character does not share his motivations with the rest of the party, don't do that for him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to go back to the Hans story as an example, I didn't allude to anything. Like, if Dan chose to have Hans do something suspicious, that's fine. But me as a GM, I knew what Hans was up to. I was 100% on board with him doing it. And that's another thing as a GM, be flexible. I mean, Dan was willing to play this character temporarily, knowing that when his plan came to fruition, he would be forced to give up the character. If he is willing to give up his character for a good plot point, as a GM, you should be willing to participate in that. Don't tell him no.
Don't tell him no.
Don't tell him no.
Tell him yes, but if you have to. But
Yeah,
don't tell him no
but
if they're really willing to work.
Try to work that into everything, because at the end of the day, if you let the players create their own drama, you're going to have these memorable moments. So I would say that as a GM, be flexible, don't say no, and let the players keep their secrets.
So yeah, don't let them look at the guy behind the curtain.
Yeah,
essentially.
Exactly.
That's actually some GMs will give that advice for everything.
Yeah.
Every facet of the game, which I don't always do that. Sometimes I'll reveal to you guys something that would have happened, but do you enjoy that or no?
I mean, yeah, I think it depends on the game and it depends on the context. Like
Right.
for a game like Deadlands or for a game like Call of Cthulhu, you want to keep your secrets. It's important to the plot.
It's mystery centric.
Yeah, when you're playing something a little more like fantasy oriented or a little more action oriented or a little more combat oriented, that's a little bit different. Like your occasional flashes that you would give us the players but not the characters. Yeah, like the those third person cutscenes that you would show us of kind of the stuff that him and his minions were up to.
We should be clear. I didn't make visual cutscenes. I narrated them.
Yeah. But I mean,
I don't have that much video
but
editing talent.
he would do a narration of an event that was taking place completely somewhere else in Faerun that was related to the big bad evil guy that not our characters would know, but us as players, he wanted us to
would
know.
find interesting.
It's kind of like if you're watching a movie and it's centered around the main characters, but then they'll have these brief cutaways to the villain and some stuff that he's up to, and then go back and it's it's a narrative that the hero never knows.
Any setting that is modern or later, you can have news broadcasts if you want the characters to know about things that are going on too, which are always a lot of fun, in my opinion, anyway.
Oh, I agree.
So to summarize your thoughts on all these matters, basically don't let the audience know about the stage magic.
Exactly, yeah.
Just keep the screen up. Don't let them peel behind the
The
curtain.
man behind the curtain is
Yeah,
not
the man behind there is no man behind the curtain.
no
There's
man behind the
only
curtain.
Oz.
There is no Warren Bossing say.
There is no Warren Bossing say. There is no man behind the curtain. And then what's his name's a real mind freak. Anyway, that's about it for. I don't even remember that dude's name. We're going to.
Chris Angel?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
I was having a brain fart about that magician.
like,
But don't tell the audience what you've got up your sleeve, essentially.
Yep.
So make it so that the magic is real. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up for what makes a. We can always touch on this topic again, but for the minutia of role playing and what makes a memorable moment, something that your players will talk about, hopefully for years down the line, is in today's episode. You can examine the ingredients and apply it to your own games in the future. My name has been Cody.
And mine is still Lance.
It's still Lance, to the best of my knowledge. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so at gmspeakeasyofficial@gmail.com. Send us your comments, concerns, hopefully questions. If you have any ideas for topics that you want to hear us yap about, I insist that you do so. Anyway, make sure that you close your tab with Summer and get home safe.
See ya.
Want to hear more from the Record Button? You can find us wherever you find podcasts, like Transistor, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. To stay up to date on our releases, find us on Facebook at the Record Button Production Group and on Twitter at TRBPRODGRP. Or stop by our website at recordbuttongroup.com, where we have links to our merch and other shows such as Wasteland Active Radio and Why Did I Write This? Thank you for listening.